here, and I just wanted to hop on. I haven't been very vocal as of late, for a lot of different reasons. Me and my family have gone through a lot in the past year, couple years. So we've really just been getting our grips on life. But it hasn't kept me away from what's going on. I'm very aware and always paying attention, to what's going on in the culture, societal things, and I could just feel things. I'm in a position where, I'm in a leadership position of a nonprofit, community leadership. I've always been, put into leadership positions, whether I've wanted them or I didn't want them. It's been one of those things that since I was young, my dad always made sure that, he always pushed leadership. And, I'm grateful for him doing that. Even though we butted heads early on, now that I'm older, I realize, the value and the importance of leadership. Now, my dad always put me in a position where he said, it was sports leadership. It wasn't necessarily communal or community leadership. It was, hey, you got to have a ball in your hands, whether it's point guard or quarterback in sports. So my dad always pushed me, to play quarterback or point guard in sports, and that was his idea of leadership. Me, on the other hand, I wasn't the out front person. I didn't want to be the figurehead. I like being a role player. I like being somebody that could lead by example. I didn't have to have 30 points a game to be a great leader on my team. I didn't have to be the best player on my team to be a leader. And so it really came to fruition in my college days, where I went to Ohio University, and really high school as well. I was always kind of, playing that leadership role. But once I got to college, my senior year, I was named captain on the football team of 100 some odd guys. I was picked by my peers. And that's probably the greatest accomplishment I can say I've had in my entire playing career, because again, when you're selected by a group of 18 to 25-year-olds, maybe, to lead them, of grown men, you know what I mean, in a D1 football program, and a successful football program at that. We were very successful. Um, you know, it really showed me, that I was being built for that position. And, now that I'm the president of a nonprofit, it's shown me that even more. But the title of this topic is, Kyrie and Kanye exposing the machine, and living in the state of an illusion. As an African American man, I'm just now getting to the point where, I'm learning the history of who I am, right? Who my people are. This is stuff that my parents didn't necessarily know. This is history that, learning the lineage of um, who we are as individuals, where we come from. Obviously, I know I come from Africa, but what part of Africa, right? And so, I did my genealogy in, West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria. I have some European, some Irish, but heavy, heavy, heavy sub-Saharan African. And so I wanted to talk about this because, obviously the media, what we got to understand about the media has been always been designed to control narratives. If you don't own the media, if you're not uh, a owner of one of these media conglomerates, which they are, which we got to understand is a lot of these, media news outlets are conglomerates. They're owned by, a few different entities. But under that umbrella is multiple news stations, news channels. You look at ESPN, owned by Disney, which is, you got to think sports, we as an athlete, that's our real life, right? It's our way of really creating generational wealth. It's our way of showcasing our skills and talents to the world. But Disney is really based on fiction, right? It's based on or it's based on an illusion, right? It's based on fantasy. It's based on, cartoon characters. And so what I've realized in the last few years, after retiring from football, I tried out for the NFL in 2013 with the Oakland Raiders. I was cut and I decided to retire as an undrafted free agent because I saw back then, it was 2013. So it's almost been a decade. And I saw just how exploited our culture how exploited we are as a culture. We have all these youth, we have all these parents putting their kids into youth sports, and I was one of those kids, uh, thinking that this is going to be their way out. It's a lottery ticket. You're a lottery ticket, to get your family out of your particular situation. You're a lottery ticket, being the first person to go to college. And that's destroying our culture and our community because we're pushing these kids to the point where many of them, that becomes their dream. They take it on as their dream for their families. And a lot of times it's the men, it's the young boys, and we're not teaching them the power of other opportunities. We're not teaching them the power of sustainability, the power of building generational wealth through asset building, through real estate, through building companies, buying companies, um, ownership and control of different entities. We are continuously setting ourselves up to be the worker bees, the enslaved folks that, you're not necessarily free, right? And so, again, I wanted to bring up this topic because there's been a lot going on when Kanye has come out and said the things that he's saying. And whether you agree with him, disagree with him, agree with some of the stuff, um, there's a reason for that. And we have to understand at the root of who Kanye West is, or Ye is. He's an artist. He never really put himself up to be the politician or this role model. Our artists and our creatives, are creatives, right? Like they are, now it's getting to a point where people have a problem because before, artists used to be broke. Artists didn't make a lot of money until they died. Now we have it where artists are making money and they're becoming millionaires, billionaires in their 40s. And that has power, that has influence. And what we're seeing is people don't like it, especially the people that are in power, because the people that are in power don't necessarily have the creative ability. They don't have the fanfare. They don't have the following. They usually just sit behind their desk, they're behind their computer, behind their emails. They'll network and they'll politic, but they don't necessarily have that social capital. They exploit people, use other people's money, other people's gifts and talents and intellectual property to make their money, but they don't necessarily have like a gift that is artistic. And so again, with Kyrie, same thing. He's an athlete, artist, athlete, same thing. You can look at sports as an art form. Since Disney owns ESPN and Disney is mainly about characters and about fantasy, we can say that sports is pretty much live theater, right? You can go to a play and watch a show and watch humans interact, doing a script. So why do people get so mad at folks like Ye or Kyrie when they speak up and speak out? Because they are going off the script, right? They don't like when you go off the script of the show, because then that throws a wrench, that throws something into the illusion that forces people to, oh, now we have to get out of this illusion and actually think. Because most people are listening to or are listening to music or going to watch sports to get away from their reality, their life, right? A lot of people, you'll hear it's escapism. We're living in escapism these days. That's why people are like, man, I don't want to hear no politics. I want to just watch sports. Or I don't want to hear, all the things that are going wrong with life. I want to just separate my life for a couple hours, a few hours, and go watch these other human beings perform for me and put on a show. It's a circus act. And so we have to understand as the masses what's really going on, the illusion, that has been, put into play with these sports and with entertainment. Because when you look at it, These white families, they don't want their kids being like these rappers. They don't want their kids being like these athletes, right? When, they tried to tame people like Allen Iverson, right? They tried to, shade off his tattoos. And because what does that do? That's influencing the white kids and white culture. Now you're seeing white kids tatted up, rocking streetwear, rocking the Jordans, Air Force Ones. Like they want to be down with the culture so bad because they've been, removed and kept away. And we've been kept away from them. And so this illusion that we've been living in, for me, like I get to see it from a perspective of I was born out of wedlock to teenage parents in upstate New York in a working class, poverty stricken family for the most part. We didn't have much. And then my dad and my stepmom ended up going off to college, HBCUs, Hampton and Norfolk State. So I kind of grew up on those campuses. After they graduated, we moved to the Washington D.C. area, the DMV, Prince George's County, where then I was ended up being around, a group of wealthy black folks, or middle to upper middle class black community that I didn't grow up around. Like my grandparents didn't grow up around that. My parents didn't even grow up around that, but they saw it as a way to, exposure, and opportunity. My parents would go on to work for different government contractors. My stepmom ended up getting her law degree from Georgetown University. I ended up going to private school, Catholic school, starting in third grade. Started in public school, went to Catholic school, third grade, St. Jerome's, to be exact, just so people can do, their research. And St. Jerome's was a feeder school into DeMatha, which is a sports powerhouse for football, basketball, a lot of other sports. And so the idea was I go to St. Jerome's. St. Jerome's prepares me to go to DeMatha. DeMatha prepares me to go to a Division I school. DeMatha also puts a lot of guys in the NFL, NBA. And so that was kind of the trajectory of my life that my parents were putting out there. And so, I completed St. Jerome's. I actually graduated eighth grade. I was one of the smallest kids in my class. So me and my parents decided that I would reclassify, and I did homeschool for a year. That year I grew 8 inches. Then I decided not to go to DeMatha. I went to one of the rivals, St. John's, which is a co-ed school. DeMatha is a not a co-ed school, but it was all boys. And I was also being recruited by other, elite college prep schools like Georgetown Prep, Episcopal, which is a boarding school in Virginia, cost about uh, too much money. But I was being recruited there. That's where I got my first trainer, where I learned how to power or Olympic lift and power lift. Um, a few other schools thrown into there, all in kind of the same conference in the same area. McNamara, Gonzaga, Good Counsel, just to name a few. And so I ended up going to St. John's, and St. John's is a co-ed school, but it was a JROTC school where you could join the JROTC. And for me, I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not shining no shoes. And I was recruited as a football player and basketball player. So I ended up being on financial aid the majority of my time at St. John's. Again, I wasn't the highest recruited basketball player. I played freshman, JV, worked my way up to varsity my junior year, ended up quitting basketball my senior year. Played football, freshman, JV. The year I was supposed to get moved up my sophomore year to varsity, ended up breaking my ankle, being out for the season. And so ended up playing varsity my junior, senior year. And so this is when I really started to see, I started to become aware and awakened to what was really going on, right? Like I knew that for me, I didn't have the same opportunities as all of my other friends, even though I was in the same um, building, the same facilities, the same education. I didn't come from the same background. I didn't have the same family that a lot of these folks had in terms of having opportunities already, having family, having grandparents that had money, have coming from I mean, I went to school with trust fund babies. Yeah, I don't even know where they are because they don't have to be on social media, right? Like they don't. So for me, I've always kind of been an open book because, I realized that I was the first generation of being in this space around this type of wealth, this type of power. Um, my friends' parents, judges, lawyers, doctors. I had some politician friends. One of my coaches, actually, from my JV team, I think he's a politician back in Maryland. So you just get to see a lot. And obviously growing up in DC, you're in the nation's capital, so you see politics at a completely different vantage point, than the rest of the country, I would say. And so again, I started to see the illusion of just the tricks that were being played. For somebody like myself, and some of my classmates in high school, some of our best athletes, sports was the thing. You know what I mean? We were there. We were being bussed in from a community, to this private school, because of our athletic ability and what we could bring to the school. And athletics brings in money, right? If you have a basketball game and they're charging 5, 10, 20 bucks to get in the game, and they're selling the game out to a couple thousand people, and then you're selling snacks at the concession stands, hot dogs, drinks, soda, stuff like that. You're bringing in money. You're bringing in revenue to the school that the school wouldn't necessarily have if the sports program sucked, right? Then you bring in national recognition as well, because if the team is elite, which I played on some very elite teams, so we went to a very elite tournaments and played against schools and other states. So you get on TV. We played on ESPN a few times. My junior year for basketball, we had one of the best players in the country. He was a McDonald's All-American, Jordan Classic All-American, and Chris Wright. And so again, this illusion, right? As athletes, we're put on a pedestal, right? You are really separated from the masses because, again, you're a money machine. You People protect their assets in a certain way. I don't have the same protections that I had when I was a collegiate athlete. When you're a collegiate athlete and you're going to a game on Saturday, you have state highway patrols cutting off the highway, ensuring that the buses make it to the stadium, and the coaches and the players and the cheerleaders and the fans, the boosters, make it to the stadium. Then you have the city cops. They cut it off and they literally escort you to the stadium. So why does that happen? Why would we shut down? It's just like a president coming through a city or a town. They shut down everything because, again, this is part of the illusion, right? We have to protect this asset because he has to make it to from point A to point B. Same thing with athletes, entertainers. You have to make it from point A to point B because there's a lot of money on the line. If that team doesn't make it to that game, the economic impact that has on that city, that town, is huge, right? I'm 10 miles, 15 miles away from Ohio State University. If Ohio State misses out on a game, there is, and again, this is for entertainment, education purposes only. This is just life experience from my personal experience. So take it for what it's worth. And so if you have a team like Ohio State, one of the largest universities in the country, they bring in probably the most money out of any other team. You got the Texases, the Penn States, some of the bigger schools. But if that game doesn't go on, the state and the city loses millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, in revenue. Um, and so they have to ensure that these games go on. They are providing jobs, they're providing entertainment, they're providing tourism. And so, again, we have to understand what's really going on in sports is the illusion. It's an illusion to keep people at bay. It keeps people still for a few hours. It keeps people controlled. I'll bring up the Ohio State thing again. It keeps 110,000 people Upwards of 500,000 people, millions of people at bay for hours at a time, drunk, feeding themselves terrible food, marketing to them, advertising to them products and services. And so, as an athlete, you don't really get to see this perspective, right? You are just part of you. You're herded like cattle, right? You have an agenda. You have some, you have a schedule. You have to be here at this time. You have to wake up at this time. You have breakfast at this time. You have meetings at this time. You have film sessions at this time. You have the bus by this time. We got to be at the stadium by this time. You got to be the first warm up on the field. The field opens up at this time. 30 minutes before the game, you got to do this. 15 minutes before the game, captains walk out. Game time. Boom. Game ends. Bus, plane, back to school. And so you don't really have a lot of time to ponder. You don't have a lot of time to see what's going on outside of your reality. You're on the field and you see what's going on, but you don't get to see it from the different angles of society and life. And so for myself, after, I've always kind of been, different. And for myself, once I really started to see the tricks, was really in high school. There's a couple of teammates of mine, even myself. We used to get our papers typed by one of our head English people. Now, I don't know how much of this information has been exposed. I won't say any names, but um, one of the head English people in our department from my high school used to help some of our elite athletes write their papers. And so there came a point where I was one of those athletes who this teacher would help type the paper. I would speak it out, she would type it. And at that point, I was like, if this is happening in high school, imagine what's going on in college. Imagine what's going on in the real world, right? Like, how many executives and CEOs are really writing their speeches? How many presidents, right? There's speech writers, there's ghost writers. How many people write books? A lot of people, in this day and age have ghost writers to help them write their book. And so for me, again, I'm living in this world, not coming from it, kind of being pushed into it and being like, oh, like my parents were, you got to work hard, you got to do this, that. Then you get to school and you're like, private school. And you're like, yo, like, this is really how it works, because again, in my high school, we had a program called Benilde where families could pay an extra few grand for their children to get extra time and help on their homework, tests, projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that person, maybe, had some type of disability. And so college is the same thing, but again, all Kanye, Ye, and Kyrie are doing is just exposing and learning in real time, right? We are seeing the first generation of black billionaires in America. Kanye is a billionaire, was a billionaire, worth a billion, few billion, at in his mid 40s, off of music and art and fashion. Not from, he's not a Walton, right? You look at Walmart, a lot of the Walmart family is billionaires because of what their dad or their granddad created, not by what they're created. So they're billionaires. They're living off of billions of dollars from something that was created by one of their parents and one of their grandparents. Kanye, literally, like when his mom died, he didn't become a billionaire. He didn't inherit, Yeezy. His dad's alive. His dad didn't give him that money. So we got to understand, like, what's really at play for generations. And, I'm a millennial. I'm 33 years old. Our older generation has brainwashed us to continue to live in this cycle of trauma and poverty, and under the oppression of people. And we don't live in those day and age anymore. The church folks, I grew up in the church. I still attend church on occasion, just to get perspective. And when you see what's going on in our church, they're not educating us about anything, not even really the Bible. They'll pick a couple talking points, a couple verses, a few verses for the year, and they will stick on those subjects for the entire year. And then they will recycle the same thing year after year after year after year. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And they'll be like, well, you got to come to Bible study to get more. Or I've heard pastors say, the people can't digest anything beyond this. And it's like, well, whose job is it to ensure and help educate them to get them beyond that? If you keep teaching the basic principles, like we don't do that in school. We don't say, well, you can't learn beyond this, so we're not going to teach you that. We're not going to push you on to geometry. We're not going to push you on to calculus. We're not going to push you on to accounting, statistics, all of these different things. But why do we do that in the black church? And that's why, the black church is losing a lot of our youth, because our youth are seeing we're not advancing, we're not growing. Stop telling me to be faithful to something that's not being fruitful. Or the only way I could be fruitful is to fall in line with these ideas that we are seeing isn't successful for the majority of folks. The poverty rate in our community, but our people is in church. The health issues that are in our communities, that you can go to church and see every black woman dealing with obesity, high sugar level, high salt intake. They lead at church, listen to the way they speaking, listen to their mouth and how they talking. They not speaking life. Like, I've had to redo a whole lot. I've had to isolate myself because of the way I've been conditioned in our community. We speak so much negativity, so much death to our youth black people, our youth black boys in particular, and our black girls as well, that by the time we become adults and they wonder why, our kids are off the rails, why our kids don't listen, why our kids don't want to follow instructions, is because there's been so much death, so much negativity pushed towards our youth. In utero, like in the womb. We hearing the negativity, we seeing the negativity, we feel it, and then you got to deal with the trauma on top of that. So stop expecting these folks like Ye and Kyrie, who are willing to enlighten themselves, willing to read a fucking book, or willing to express themselves. I know Kanye said he doesn't read, but we got to understand, like, not everything everybody says, we take everything, verbatim. He's had enough life experience to understand what's going on, right? He's an old enough man, black man. He's from Southside Chicago, to understand what's going on. And so what happens is we get in these positions of influence and power, and they don't want us to use our voice on these platforms because, again, you're breaking the code. These folks didn't come here to watch Colin Kaepernick take a knee and talk about Black Lives Matter. They came here to get away from reality. They came here to get away from the truth, to live in illusion for a couple hours, to watch a stage play. Now, me and my wife went to go see Hamilton. It's a stage play. I was in a stage play before. I've done commercials. I've done commercials for large corporations, Nationwide Insurance, DSW, Key Bank, just to name some of the few. I was on the cover of a sportswear magazine. Like, look how thick this is. Now, actors, like, putting on an image to sell products, right? Selling this shirt, selling these shorts, selling these tights to sell more product. So we got to understand what this illusion is, right? Like, lights, camera, action. We don't show the outtakes. Social media. What is it about? Highlights. Everybody's showing highlights. And it's a reason you don't see a lot of people post, because a lot of people ain't got highlights like that. As an athlete, I understand what highlights are. A college coach, a professional coach, they don't want to just see your highlights. They want to see a full game. They want to see what happens when you mess up. They want to see what it happens like when you lose. They want to see what happens. How are you? How's your character? When you get beat on a play, how do you interact with your teammates on a play-by-play basis? There's a lot you can leave out when you just posting highlights, when you just making yourself up, when you just, dressing yourself up, in this illusion. And that's what a lot of this is. And social media is still in its infancy stage. So we have to understand, we have to go deeper. We should be using these platforms to educate, to motivate, to inspire, to encourage, to help with creativity, to build, to break down some of the old stereotypes and negative learned behavior that we've had, to connect with other cultures and to learn about history, because they only teaching us why in community they only talk about Martin Luther King Jr. Like, that makes no sense, and we don't question it as a people. So you gonna murder him, you assassinated him, but then let's celebrate him every year. And that's the only black leader that we celebrate. They don't celebrate Malcolm X. They don't celebrate Marcus Garvey. We might celebrate Rosa Parks a little bit, but so many black leaders, George Washington Carver, all of our inventors that we have out here, and we only bring up Martin Luther King Jr. Oh, there's a Martin Luther King Jr. Awards. There's a Martin Luther King Jr. Awards. There's a Martin Luther King Jr. Street. Why? And as melanated folks, we have to be the ones to take that. We can't keep expecting other cultures to celebrate us, especially not our leaders who stood for something. They celebrate us for being ponies, show ponies, circus animals. If you don't perform and somebody has you on their fantasy team, they have a problem with you personally. And they're going to let that be known on social media. They're going to let it be known on Twitter. They're going to be let it known in their friend group. They don't care about us when we can't provide them escapism. They don't want to hear from us when we keeping it 100. They don't want, they don't want all of the stuff that comes with being who we are. They just want the vibe, right? They just want the culture. They just want to feel good, because they don't have nothing. So what we have to understand as people is we have to get out of this illusion. We have to get out of this poverty mindset. We have to get out of this this victim mindset as well. We're not victims, we're victors. They've been trying to kill us. They've been trying to destroy us for centuries. And they still haven't done it, especially as black men. So what do? They poison our mind. They poison our food. They poison our water. They poison the air. They poison us mentally through schools, through the indoctrination that we're continuously learning. They poison us through sports. Football, I had to get out of football. Like, I love football. Football is, been such an amazing part of my life, but it's also been a huge detriment to my life, because I've spent so much time, energy, spiritual energy on the sport just to be discarded as human waste. Just to be looked at as, if you're not performing in this vantage point, we don't want to hear what you got to say. We don't want to support you. If I tell you that most black people are living in poverty, most people committing suicide, like the black male suicide rate is through the roof. But we don't want to talk about that. Black men can't be more diverse than just putting a basketball through a hoop or tackling each other. When you look at college sports, why do we only see black people in football and basketball? Why is there a lack of, African Americans in volleyball, lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, water polo, swimming, diving? We don't talk about that though. But what are the main money making sports in college? Football and basketball. They don't have a problem recruiting from the hood when they want some good athletes for football and basketball to make money. And we got to understand how many universities is really out here. And they're coming into our communities, excavating, removing some of our best and brightest. Because again, not all these players are the best or the most talented, but in college you got to have some grades, right? You got to have some grades and some character. You got to be able to follow instructions and directions. You got to be coachable. So there's a reason some of our elite athletes that are elite don't make it, because they not following directions. They don't listen. They not coachable. They don't have the grades. They may have dropped out of school. They may be in an environment where they, selling dope, doing drugs already, whatever. They may not have the resources to have people drive them around, take them to camps, clinics, take them to, college visits. I was very fortunate to have a father who drove me up and down the East Coast. I even came over to the Midwest for college visits and camps. I understand that is a huge privilege. And that's part of the reason why I was highly recruited. It wasn't because I was a great athlete. Yes, I was good. I was solid. I was an athlete. I wasn't just pegged as one position. I could play multiple positions, but I was also able to get in front of a lot of different coaches at a high level. And that's part of the game, is being seen. You can't make an impact if you're not seen or heard. And that's what, again, the social media platforms and all this stuff has allowed us to do. And that's why you see Kanye. He didn't used to talk to the media. And that's what, like, this is why we need more black media. Because, again, like, just a few years ago, Kanye didn't talk to the media. Nobody said anything about it. He was always shooing the media off, the paparazzi. But now look at him. He talking to the paparazzi. Why is he doing that? You don't think he understands the production that goes on with keeping up with the Kardashians? How many cameras are following them? How many producers are setting up shots and scenes? It's a production. Like, now we're living in a time where everything is highly produced. The news, highly produced. The news, you have an executive director, you have an executive producer, you have a producer, you got reporters, you got anchors, you got the main, the larger, the national, and then you got the regional, and then you got the city. Come on, man. Highly produced. Movies, highly produced. Commercials, highly produced, to get things to look a certain way. That McDonald's burger don't look the same when you buy a McDonald's burger in real life. But we gonna market it to you and sell it to you this way. Oh man, that looks so good. So when you see it, it's ingrained in your mind already. We ain't even gotta really sell it to you. We could just show you. Now you see the McDonald's arches, and they started at the kids level with, with the Happy Meal. So we got all of these illusions, things that have been put into place that are keeping us at bay. The rich keep getting richer, but we don't see them. Why we don't hear from them? Why don't they get exposed when they do something wrong? Why don't they get exposed when they, do crooked business? And that's all Kanye is saying. I've been put in bad deals. If these people are really good people, why would they subject me to a bad deal? Think about how wild that is. We get into contracts with human beings that are exploiting us. because they know we don't know how to negotiate, or they know we don't have lawyers, or they know we don't come from a well-read family, or they know we're not going to ask questions. Because when you come from poverty and somebody says, hey, you're a rapper out of the hood talking about sex, drugs, alcohol, X, Y, and Z, if I tell a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, I'll pay you $5 million, all you got to do is sign here and keep rapping about what you rapping about. But they not telling these rappers, as soon as you sign this dotted line, I own all your intellectual property. I own everything. And you got to do what I say. You got to put out the music that I tell you to put out. Or guess what? We're not going to release it. We're going to shelve you. We're going to put you on the shelf. Think about it, man and woman. Athletes, if you don't fall in line, if you don't fit the narrative that we want you to fit, we'll just cut you. Because guess what? It's thousands of people that would love to be in your position and won't say nothing. Why we don't hear from no other athletes? Most of these athletes, black athletes, are coming from poverty. So why don't we hear from them? Why aren't they speaking up? Oh, we got a nonprofit here. That nonprofit don't mean nothing once the money stop coming through. That nonprofit don't mean nothing. Like, people ain't donate. How many of your fans are truly donating to your nonprofit? Or they like, nah, I bought tickets to watch you play. That's good enough. I'm not going to support your mission to feed the hood. I'm not going to support your mission to educate the hood. I'm not going to support your mission to give back to your community where you come from. You're a millionaire. You should be doing it. I'm not. And they pin, people who aren't millionaires, right, against them. And being a high-paid employee is not the lifestyle. And we got to understand this. This is part of the slave trick. Folks is getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to still be enslaved, talking about we ain't making enough money, because they're living a consumerism lifestyle. People are getting paid hundreds of thousands. Now, I watched my parents make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I still felt like we was broke. They still treated me like, you can't do this, you can't do that. I barely ever had any money when I'm going out with my friends. Like, my friends have to pay for me. And I'm like, yo, we living in a $500,000 house. Y'all making six figures. Something ain't adding up. Water getting turned off, electricity something ain't adding up. I thought we was good. But they don't teach us about taxes, right? You're a high-paid employee paying taxes, right? So your boss, you are a tax write-off to your boss, or your executives, your CEO. So he might pay you, let's say, all right, we'll take the NFL, NBA. So these guys are getting paid, millions of dollars. But when you're getting paid millions of dollars, you have to pay a lot of taxes, right? So you're getting a W-9, you're getting direct deposit. Let's say you get $1 million in your bank account. Well, what does the government do? As soon as you get that check, there's already been deductions in your check. State taxes, income taxes. When you play sports, you get taxed in every city and state that you play in. Some tax levels are higher. You go play in California, you play in Ohio, you play in Florida, New York, Texas. Taxes are different. So you got to pay taxes in every city and state that you play in. So let's say you had $1 million. You got $1 million check. Everybody looks at you because it's been published, it's been put out there that you signed a $10 million contract from this team, and you're a millionaire. The average person is like, yo, you're a millionaire. What are you complaining about? What are you talking about? I'm only making 50K. I'm only making 60K. I'm only making 100K. You making $1 million. Well, guess what? Somebody making 60K paying taxes, right? That tax getting cut in half. You might keep what out of that 60K? You might keep what, 40, 35? So you're a millionaire. You getting taxed. Your tax bracket is different. So you getting taxed at $1 million. So in every city, so you might walk away with 600,000. You got a wife, a girlfriend. You got kids. You got family. You done retired your mom and your dad, possibly. You done bought mom and dad a car. Guess who got to put gas in that car? And if you buy them a Benz, you buy them a nice car, you got to take the nicest stuff. Then you got to do maintenance on it every, 6 months. Then you got your car. You might have multiple cars. You got to do maintenance on the house. You got to have a cleaner. You got to have a trainer. You got to have a chef. Like, we got to understand there's so much more. And a lot of these folks ain't creating business entities that they can move that money through, which the executives understand. They house going to be in their business name, they office gonna be in business name, they car's gonna be in their business name, they kids tuition coming out of that business account, they wife, they trip, they family vacations coming out of that trip, out of that vacation, they jets, everything come out of the business account. Because then guess what? It's a tax write-off. This is a business expense. Phones, tax write-off. Everything. Swoop, business card. Swoop, business expense. Boom, go right to the accountant. Accountant gonna move it around. CPA gonna move it around. You got investments. You buy investment properties. You got houses. You got multifamily. You end up buying other property. Some people buy depreciating assets just to write it off. We haven't been taught this game until recently. Now we got all these people on social media and Instagram. Oh, business credit, business credit, business credit, build wealth, business credit, build wealth. You don't see none of the white folks out here talking about it. They just doing it. Buying properties. We don't talk about being put on parents' credit to enhance your credit score. What? I had friends in college, white friends, who had credit cards and that joint was paid off monthly. And I'm just like, I got a debit card. Nobody even told me about credit. My parents never even mentioned it. Never had a credit card till I graduated. Personal guarantees. Who's signing for homes? Who's signing for loans? Business loans. We barely got banks in the hood. Like, we gotta understand, like, we have been behind the 8 ball for centuries. And it's now all just coming to light because of the internet and social media and people starting to dig up more and more. They've been utilizing these scams and schemes and tricks for hundreds of years at this point. They playing with house money. Parents been invested in Coca-Cola. Grandparents been invested in Coca-Cola, investing in all these different investments, estates, inheritances. Somebody died. Oh, your granddad left you a whole business. Your granddad left you a whole house. Oh, I don't want the house. I'll sell it. House worth $500,000 to $1 million. So now you sell a house. Let's say you just doing you. Somebody that left you a house, you got your crib already. You decide to sell the house for $1 million, $500,000. Now you got $1 million. You don't think you can take that $500,000 and flip it to something else? Most of our parents are still working as essential workers. It's crazy. But we don't have the conversation, and we want to, and then they use, and what really baffles me is they use us against one another. So they'll use the puppets. They'll use the Shaquille O'Neals, all these people that are on TV to then bash the other one. We don't see them doing that to their culture. And when they do it to their culture, guess what? It's a lawsuit, defamation. You're putting a stain on my character. You're impacting my money. Kanye West should be suing everybody who's calling him crazy. Anybody calling you crazy, because that is impacting his worth, his value now. Now people don't want to deal with him because he's crazy. Don't associate with him because he's crazy. No. He's crazy because he's coming from a perspective that most people that idolize him don't come from. I respect Kanye West because I understand the struggle that it is to be a black man in America. I don't have to agree with everything he says, but I do understand the position of being in Hollywood, being a celebrity, being a influencer, being somebody that is now in a position of power and they want you to act a certain way. Because I've been there. I was the clean cut black private school kid who followed all of the rules in their system. I was the one that could tell, the other black players, yo, chill out. You know what I mean? Let's get it right. You know what I mean? Because they don't want us to really turn up. Because if we really turned up, all of this stuff would be flipped upside down. If all the gang banging and traumatizing that's going on in our own hood moved to the suburbs, if we started robbing them and shooting them like they rob, shoot, and kill us, things would be different. If we had life insurance on everybody, these cops wouldn't be killing us like they're killing us. But we got to understand we've been put into an illusion. They don't want to talk about our trauma and our pain because then that forces them to have to look at themselves in the mirror. That forces them to look at themselves and say, what have I really done? What am I really inheriting? Blood diamonds? Blood corporations? 1619? Like, we got to understand what's really going on. The civil rights movement was only a few decades ago. Voting rights. Oh, white fountain here. Like, we go to the mall and it's crazy sometimes because it's like, just think about it. We didn't have that access before. And we still barely got it now. But we have to understand, man, we have to, one, get a spine. It's too many of us are playing this game for the money. I come from poverty, man. At the end of the day, working class America, and I see the illusion. I've been very fortunate to have opportunities. I've been very fortunate and opportunity really comes from position. You know what I mean? Like, we have a lot of opportunity in the hood right now. But again, the infrastructure, all right, the resources, the access to resources is missing. It's snowing too. Wow. In Ohio. But, as a young man that, I've seen and I've experienced things, I'm at the point where I can't live the facade anymore. There is no more small talk. There is no more, because one, I know when I'm in positions that people are just trying to extract my resources, trying to connect with me because they know I might have some connections and relationships that can help benefit them. I'm no longer in that place where I'm trying to please people. I used to be a people pleaser. You may not like what I have to say. You may not agree with what I have to say. You may not, but this is my truth. It's my reality. It's the truth of a lot of young black men who don't have the perspective that I have because they haven't been where I've been. I went to a PWI and we had 400 black students when I got there. Out of 30,000 students, 400 black students. Now we got to understand how many colleges are around the country. I went to a school in the middle of nowhere, Appalachia. 400 black students. On our football team, we had probably, 60 to 80 black students? Basketball team, 9, 10 out of 15 players, girls and boys. You can go to these liberal arts schools, you ain't gonna see no black students. Maybe one or two. These private schools, high schools, you can't afford it. Think about it. How many people could afford? I'm thinking about my parents. My parents couldn't really afford 20,000. I think my high school was maybe like 16 at the time. I think it's like 20 now. My little sister went to a school that was 30K. Now, we're paying for the education, but what you're really paying for is the access and the network and the opportunities, and the seeing of the structure is different. When you go to these private schools, yes, they have good instructors and the teachers are going to spend more time. They're not going to fail you. How you going to fail somebody that's paying you 20 grand? Think about it, people. You're not going to let Johnny fail. You're going to do everything in your power to ensure that Johnny gets it. That's just how the game works. You got to pay to play. So we got to understand what's really going on. The elites pay for these schools to separate themselves from the masses. And then you got to think, typically, if you go to a private school or you go to a college, you're going to marry somebody from wherever you meet them, right? So if you're in the hood, most likely you're going to marry somebody or be with somebody or do what you do within the confines of that community. If you live in the suburbs, most likely you're going to marry somebody, be with somebody from the confines of that community. If you go to a private school, most likely you're going to date people in your immediate circle. If you go to a college, most likely you're going to, same thing. If like, it's not really a trick. It's basics. But we've been put in the trick bag. We've been put in an illusion. We've been put in the poverty mindset perpetually. I'm gonna wrap this up since I've been on here for about an hour. But I want people to really think, man, like, stop listening to these puppets on TV, man. They're actors. They're playing a role. They're clickbait. They don't make money if people don't watch. So how do they make sure people watch? They entertain. A lot of these news stations aren't fact-based anymore. They're all opinion-based. They're commentators. They're putting on a show. And this show has been broadcast to millions of people as fact, and it's not fact. Why don't we see any of our black leaders on TV all the time, our educators? You don't see white people listening to their actors as leaders, their athletes as leaders. Like, how many white athletes speak up for their community? They don't have to. You don't see JJ Redick out here speaking up for white America or denouncing white America, right? They love the culture, though, so they'll exploit the culture. They'll get their bag off the culture and then go blend right in with their community. We can't blend in. If you're black and successful, you can't blend in nowhere. You stick out like a sore thumb in the hood. You stick out like a sore thumb in a white community. So what's for you? That's why growing up in Prince George's County was very impactful for me. And I think eventually, I don't know, I would probably want to move back there because you see yourself. You don't stick out like a sore thumb. I've been in Ohio for over a decade now, and everywhere I go, I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm not from around here. I'm different. I don't mind being different, but there's a different reality when you have to uphold a certain narrative or image, or you have to, always be looking over your shoulder, or always wondering why everybody's staring at you because they know you different. But yeah, man, we gotta wake up. We really have to wake up. For me, I don't really watch sports anymore because I see the trick bag. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, watching football, like, I'm seeing other people destroy themselves. Antonio Brown came on talking about CTE. Nobody wants to discuss it. You know why they don't want to talk about CTE? Because then the NFL is going to have to come to grips with their league is dangerous. It's violent. It's not good. It's not healthy. These sports, football in college, is not healthy. The amount of drugs that I was taking just to feel right, not healthy. The amount of alcohol I was consuming because, you just on such a high, like you gotta experience it. Like, it's not healthy, man. The amount of pain pills I seen my teammates taking just to play, the amount of cortisone shots, the amount of Toradol shots that just numb you, the brain, the concussions, the broken bones. Like, we're living in a cycle of trauma when you play in sports, especially football. It's a constant state of trauma. Somebody's breaking an arm, somebody's breaking an ankle, somebody's hurting something every single day, and you just become numb to it. You become used to it. It becomes the norm. Somebody breaks something in practice, y'all move 20 yards down the field, turn the other way, and keep fucking going. Like, your homie over here screaming in pain. But the show must fucking go on. And that's what this entertainment shit is about. The show must go on. No, it don't. The show don't gotta go on. Not with us involved. Not with us at the head of it. How this show going on in the NFL when no black people own no stake in the NFL company, or no major stake in the NFL company? Come on, man. How this show must go on when we don't run a lot of the major corporations in America, like we haven't been here for centuries? Come on, man. How we still living in poverty, how we still can't get home loans, how we still can't get business loans. But Black Lives Matter. We not charity cases, and they not gonna give you a lot of money in charity. Why they only give, you got these mega corporations that'll give a couple $1,000s to a charity. What's that few $1,000s supposed to do? You got all these private equity, venture capital firms, all of these colleges with large endowments. They're all in bed with each other. The oil companies, the gas companies, the tech companies, they're all in cahoots. And that's something else that Ye brought up, collusion. It's all types of collusion going on in big business. Why don't we get to collude? When we collude, it's a crime. We're colluding, but we don't use business structures. They use business structures. They're colluding under the guise of business. Gotta learn the game, people. But yeah, I mean, I just make your own. I mean, we have to be self. You have to think for self. We have to stop thinking by what's been put into our rear view or our vision. It's a distraction. It's been used to control and pimp and monetize and traumatize. So again, this is Gerald Moore, Jr. I hope you got something from this. But I just had to get that off my chest. I woke up with that on my heart. I feel for anybody, any black male in particular, that's in a position of influence, that's in a position of being on these stages, on these pedestals, because it's not easy. It's not easy having white kids idolize you and the parents going out buying Yeezys, and the kids want to be a part of the culture, but they don't understand the culture. They don't understand what we have to deal with, what we have to go through, what our ancestors have been through. And so we're in an awakening stage. It's going, I mean, it's not going to get no better no time soon, but we got to understand, our power and influence, our power and truth. And we have to keep pushing forward. We also have to build and collectively encourage, and collectively support. But that's my little 2 cents for this gray, snowy Saturday. Be sure to follow me. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Gerald Moore Jr., Twitter. But yeah, let me know in the comments what y'all think. If y'all got any other topics y'all want me to talk about, obviously I could talk about sports all day. I could talk about my experience as a Division I All-American athlete, college, high school, business right now, nonprofit space. There's a lot of things that I like to talk about. Family, I'm a husband, I'm a father, coach, leader. So thank you for coming to this TED Talk, but I'm signing out. Peace.